Bowser is coming.
I'm not afraid. I'll do anything for my brother.
We're going to save him.
Yes! Fire!
Hello everyone and welcome back to another Backlot Banter movie review. My name is Tucker Hills. I am of course joined by my co-hosts who are a couple of turtle-crushing, pipe-laying, mushroom-huffing Goombas, Tanner Dykstra and Abram Buhner, and today we're here to review the Super Mario Brothers movie, long awaited, long in the works, and now it's here. The video game movie revolution is upon us. And we're here to talk about this movie, but if you want to talk to us about the Super Mario Brothers movie or any of the other movies releasing henceforth and forthwith, join our Discord. That link is in the top of the description, and while you're down there, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell, leave a comment telling me your favorite Mario game, and if you saw this movie, your favorite Mario Easter egg, because there's quite a few of them.
We mean it when we say subscribe to the channel, by the way. 85% of you are freeloaders who are not subscribed to Backlot Banter, and that is, frankly, far too many. As I said, I want to get that to 0%.
Can't that.
No new people watching Backlot Banter.
Yes, 100% of the Earth's population.
Yeah.
Backlot Banter subscribers. Let's go.
We won't rest until we get there.
If all of you guys subscribe, these two gentlemen can buy the fire-breathing Bowser toy also.
From Target.
From
For
Target.
only
The broken,
$49.99?
the
Only
broken
$49.99.
fire breathing.
It's not
The-
broken,
What a
it has the
steal!
wrong batteries.
Yeah.
All right. That's
Okay,
enough
okay.
guffawing and goombaying around. Let's talk about the Super Mario Brothers movie. Abram, you were the one I didn't see this film with, and I'd like to hear your thoughts as the biggest Nintendo fan I know, and also the person with, I think, the most faith in this movie that I've known for a while.
I think it's horrendous.
You think it's bad? Okay, all right, let's go.
Well, I want to draw on some nuance here. I just thought that would be a funny way to open. This is such a local reference that's not going to make sense to anybody else, but you two will find it amusing, then I'll expand upon it. This is what Seth must feel like when he's watching all these awful Marvel movies. Because I think that the Mario movie is so shockingly devoid of plot and story and character development that I actually can't even really believe that this what's his name, Chris Fogler, whatever the writer's name is. I have no idea. I can't believe this is what they came up with. That said, I loved it. On a personal level, the fun factor here is through the roof. And a lot of it, though, again, comes down to the fact that I'm a Nintendo fan. I am the biggest Nintendo fan you'll ever meet. And I was sitting there with a dumb smile on my face for 90 minutes. And to me, the real legacy of the Mario movie isn't going to sort of crop up for a long time. Because we're all going to just see it, have the dopamine rush of loving the references and loving the beautiful animation and all of these things that we've loved on console and handheld for our entire life. Once that veneer is gone, then I think we can watch the Mario movie again and sort of appreciate it for where its strengths and weaknesses lie. But right now, I think that it's a very poor movie from like a filmic perspective. But as an experience, I adored it.
Tanner, you're up next.
No, Tucker, I want you to go next because you're the other Nintendo fan here, and I'd like to bring up the rear as the non-Nintendo fan.
Yeah, I've played a couple Nintendos in my day.
I think so, yeah.
This movie did not. It didn't land for me as the movie was starting. I think it took a while for it to sort of rev up because I was going, oh, this is really Illumination-y. We got that dog at the beginning that actually just looks like Doug from Up, which is kind of weird. And I'm like, oh, these jokes aren't really landing or whatever. But I think one of the strengths of this film, for me, comes in what a lot of people have criticized this film on, which is the momentum of the film and the pacing, which is ridiculous. And I think can properly be criticized for its lack of transitions between sequences. But I do think that when the movie gets going about a third of the way in and doesn't stop, that momentum flowing from scene to scene did keep me very engaged as it was going. And funnily enough, I think this movie works best as an action movie in terms of some really creative choreography and action set pieces, and those are very well done. And so for the vast majority of this film's runtime, I was having a blast seeing the way that they reinvented the Mario world, because I think that for me, that's this film's greatest strength, is that they finally made the Mario world feel like a somewhat cohesive place with characters that have genuine personalities and not arcs, but personalities. And that, I think, can't be understated as something that Nintendo has strayed away from in the core Mario universe for a long time. This feels very distinct to me as a Nintendo fan, and I really enjoyed it because of that. I think that writing-wise and joke-wise and pacing-wise, there are moments where I'm like, okay, yep, this is Illumination. But on the whole, I was like, yeah, this is pretty damn good, and I had a great time with it.
I don't give a goddamn fuck about Mario, is what I'll say. I'll come strong out of the gate saying that. I don't care about the world of Mario outside of I know it. You know, I recognize it.
You've been forced to be around it.
I've been forced to be around it in a couple ways. And funny enough, I've played Super Mario Odyssey and loved that game. But ultimately, I am not a Nintendo fan in any way that pales in comparison to you two. So, the Super Mario Brothers movie is bad. And I know that there's even, breaking out of the conversation of it being an adaptation of Mario and that world, there's been conversations about, like, how fair is it to harshly critique a film for children, a children's film.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna do it anyway because I'm gonna do it anyway. But of course, this is a film for like 5-year-olds who don't even really know what Mario is really. That's who its target demographic is. It's Illumination film. Of course, there are the references in there for Mario fans, but if you're looking at the film on a filmic level, as Abram mentioned, it's not up to snuff with anything filmically in that sense. But it's a bad movie. I think it's really, frankly, quite bad. There's no character arcs. The pacing is maybe the fastest and the most rushed I've ever seen, and that strips away any sense of like small conflict moments where character is built. I think there are glaring holes here, but in the spirit of positivity, I really like the score and I really like Jack Black, and that's what I will give the Super Mario Brothers film.
I want to, Tanner, I want to actually address something you said that I disagree with, because here's the thing. I agree with both of you entirely, which is kind of an interesting place for me to be in. But
as usual, you fall somewhere in the middle.
I actually don't fall in the middle. I fall emphatically on both poles, which I think is interesting. But
as usual, we fall in the middle.
True.
I don't agree that this movie is for like little kids who don't know what Mario is. What's interesting to me about this film is that, let's put it this way. I was watching Grace Randolph's review.
Yes. Haven't seen it yet. Going to watch it tonight.
And I just want to put it out there, as much as I meme sometimes, I am truly a big fan of Grace Randolph and admire her work quite a bit.
Yeah.
But what was so compelling to me about her review is that she begins it by saying a statement that I basically never heard anybody else in their life ever make, which is, I don't play Nintendo games, but I love Illumination Entertainment. and I think what was really interesting about her review is how she begins to go through the film point by point on how it just doesn't make sense if you don't know what's going on in the Mario universe.
Yes.
Absolutely. It's somehow and I think she's totally right. I think it is a very inaccessible movie.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. Yeah. And I think that filmically, that is where I criticized the film, even though experientially, those were the elements that heightened my enjoyment of it. There are a lot of moments, especially as the film opens, that I criticize, where the film stops to do a reference or an Easter egg, and guess what? It's an arcade machine, or he's playing Kid Icarus, or he's doing spoilers, I guess, or it's whatever. It's a fucking poster of a Nintendo game in the background, or it's like, oh hey, this is kind of funny because it's like a Mario thing, but in Brooklyn. And those moments to me felt so ham-fisted and out of place. And the movie, I think, kind of lets up on those as it starts getting into action sequences. Of course, there are some moments in there, but they're more naturally integrated into the action. But when the film stops and shows you an Easter egg, and it's like, hey, guess what? We know that Nintendo is a thing that you might know. That, I think, kills the pacing and feels very out of the world of the film, even though that kind of is the world of the film.
I think, if I may, Tanner, I think it actually goes beyond that, though. Because you're right in that the Brooklyn section of the film has way more sort of obvious Easter eggs than the rest of the film, wherein a lot of it is just like, oh, there's a Mario thing I recognize, but we're in the Mushroom Kingdom, so there's sort of a sense of cohesion there. The bigger issue for me is or it's not an issue for me, it's an issue with the film. It takes so many things for granted. It takes for granted what anything is. Like, there's no setup or contextualization for what Bowser is trying to do. There's no real concept of understanding, to Grace's point in her review, of why the Mario Brothers are the way that they are, or doing what they're doing, or really anything. And that's what makes this, to me, such an interesting adaptation, because it's one of the only examples I can think of a cross-medium adaptation where the solution was, let's just take and move. There is
copy and paste.
There is really no translation here. There's no attempt to be made to characterize, to establish motivations. Bowser wants to marry Peach because Bowser has wanted to marry Peach. Peach is going to team up with Mario because they're on the same side, and you should know this already. And I just think it's very strange they didn't go through the effort to at least justify what's happening throughout the narrative. And I use narrative very lightly because it really is just like a sequence of events that take us on a plot that is, Bowser is moving to a point and he wants to marry Peach when he reaches that destination. That's kind of the movie. And I think it's very strange that that's what they landed on for the overarching idea of how to compose this movie.
Yeah, it is plotless, nearly. Like, it seems like really at Illumination, in association with Nintendo, they're like, oh, I guess this movie does need to have a plot, and we can't just do Mario stuff for 90 minutes. So, sucked into Mushroom Kingdom, they get split up for some second act conflict. No, throw Donkey Kong in there, and maybe they have to get an army to fight Bowser at the end. And that's it. And of course, we have to have our characters team up and stuff like that. But it seems like they did the least amount of story work possible, is what they really were trying to do here.
If I may, Tanner, the relationship between Donkey Kong and Mario is a brilliant example of this, because once we get swallowed up by the eel, we exchange what is the most cursory lines of dialogue, wherein Donkey Kong is like, my dad thinks I'm a fuck up, and Mario says, brother, me too. And then suddenly they're doing the Retro Studios era Donkey Kong like jet barrel to escape. Mm-hmm. And that is sort of the extent of how the relationship between Mario and Donkey Kong is characterized. And I think that's a great example of what you're saying, Tanner. It is, let's just identify the fewest number of plot points that can be tied to the fewest number of character moments that still provide the audience with some sense of progression of a relationship or dynamic.
The same goes for Mario and Peach as well, but you'd be hard pressed to know that her name is Princess Peach if you're watching the first half of this film, because they meet. Mario does not introduce himself. Peach does not introduce herself. She is known as the princess, and Mario is nameless to Peach, apparently until Toad says his name. He's like, oh, hey, Mario. And then they just and then they just know each other. Because it is built on this thing of, like, this cultural understanding of, like, you know who Mario and Peach are, so we don't really need to tell a story here of how they meet.
Yeah, and that's what's very interesting about this as an adaptation, is I do think that because it is so lacking, it's hard in terms of plot and especially backstory for these characters, it makes it hard for me to justify this being a film. Because there's not really a story there. You watch a film to watch a character grow, to be invested in a world, and I'm invested in it because of other factors, not because of what this film does. But on the same side of that coin, in terms of the characters, I do think in terms of personality, I vastly prefer what they did with the characters in this film as opposed to the very one-note characters that they have in the games. I think that Bowser having a sort of corny side to his personality is a great benefit to him as a character. He becomes very endearing. He's very simple, but he has this sort of extra side to his personality. Donkey Kong being this sort of bro-y guy who wants to live up to his dad and flex for the fans, that is something that's never been a part of his character before, and I thought that was a lot of fun to see in terms of a new version of Donkey Kong. And Peach being a lot more sort of macho in this film and being able to confidently lead and make decisions, those have been implied in games, but we've never really gotten a chance to see that before. So giving especially those three characters a lot more personality. I think Luigi is the one that's carried over one for one the most in terms of being a little more timid, but having a sort of brave side to him.
Piss baby Luigi.
He's a piss baby, yeah, but he's a fun little piss baby.
Yeah, we love him.
I think that they did a very good job giving these characters distinct personalities that I think evolve from what the games have given them, and I I'm excited to see what they do with these versions of these characters in the future. See if these versions of these characters affect the games in any way, because I think they are, to my eyes, the definitive version of these iconic characters personality-wise.
I want to make one other sort of macro criticism of the film along the lines of Tanner, which I actually think will have gone over both of your guys' heads, because you haven't gone to Super Nintendo World.
True.
What's really interesting about this film is that basically everything that happens is directly analogous to something that is either in the park or coming to the park. And I think it's...
Oh, the Donkey Kong Jungle World.
Are you telling me that this might be some sort of marketing tool?
What's the reason I want to really drill in on it is because this is always going to be a marketing tool for Nintendo, but I was surprised by the degree to which it is a direct synthesis with the theme park, to where it's not necessarily that you go to that theme park and suddenly you're in like the Nintendo world. It's more that you're going to see the theme park adaptation of this film, but we got them in the other order. And so I just think that the more you start to really look at this film on the level of business, on the level of adaptation, it becomes so thin that it can be frustrating.
Yeah.
But there's a moment minutes into the movie where it's just fucking, it's a movie made for me. Charles Martinet is there as Jumpman, and then the guy from Wrecking Crew is a character in the narrative, and then Luigi gets a call on his phone and it plays the GameCube startup jingle, and I'm like, brother, they made a movie for me. And this is where I flip to Tucker's side, because Tanner, you're entirely right about the objective quality of the film. But I think what this movie is going to become is going to be a rallying point for fans, and perhaps a sort of dangerous precedent for IP holders, that you really can just
cash in.
You can create a film that is wholly predicated on somebody's personal enjoyment of IP, and that'll carry it. Because that has been true for a long time. I mean, that's been true for most comic book films, the era of blockbuster filmmaking we're in. But I think that the Mario movie is that to a level that I haven't personally seen before. Yeah. But again, this is I feel like I have to make the criticisms that I've made, so you have sort of a contextualization for the fact that I still love the movie. I mean, I love this movie.
Yeah.
But it is entirely because there's about $2,000 of amiibo over there, and I've been playing Nintendo games since I was 5 years old.
Yeah.
And that's why I love the movie.
No, I want to get into some specifics here, but I do want to, I want to play in your guys' ballpark for a little bit, because we can talk about, the story, the characters, yada, yada, yada all day. That's no surprise. What makes this film unique is that it's the Super Mario Brothers movie. So, but I'm going to fold both of those things into one for me. My objective criticism of the film and the Mario adaptation. What were your guys' feelings about, because this is just a moment that sticks out to me, the moment where we have to do our Super Mario Brothers training gauntlet, and we do a Peach says, these are the power-ups. If you use the power-ups, you get special abilities, but if you get hit, you lose the special abilities. What are our feelings there, as because this is sort of tailor-made for people who are hardcore Nintendo fans, but also it is a children's film with a larger mass audience appeal, so they do feel they have to explain those things, I guess?
Well, here's the thing, is I think that it is good that they explained it, and explain a lot of these things. There's a lot of, especially as the movie's getting going, explain what a thing is. Pipes are going to suck you in. Coin blocks are going to pop out coins when you hit them. Mario can get big if he eats the mushroom, but he doesn't like mushrooms. I hated that joke, by the way. And power-ups are going to give you powers until you get hit, and then you lose them. These elements, I think, are important to explain, especially as they're contextualized within the world, because I do think the way that they're used within the world feels very natural as a part of this ridiculous world where pipes are transportation and blocks are floating everywhere. I think in that way it feels kind of cohesive and fun, but because of the pacing of the film and the limited runtime we're working with, we have to speed run explaining these things. And they're not naturally developed in the plot. I think that it would have made a lot more sense for Mario to stumble upon a mushroom and somehow be forced to eat it and realize he gets big, and then have a sort of training montage of him figuring out on his own, and then okay, that sets up for later that he knows how to use these things, or any number of ways that these elements could be more naturally described in the plot so they feel like genuine steps and payoffs rather than stop, do exposition, then payoff. I think that's the problem with the balance of this film, because I think it does need to be described, but they need to describe it so quickly because we gotta get to the action sequence where the thing that we just described is actually utilized.
Yeah, I mean, so I think we should be clear. I mean, I would hope that people watching this have seen the movie, but in case you haven't, the power-up explanation is 30 seconds of screen time, probably.
Yes.
Like, we're not... Because let's be clear, there's not really scenes in this movie. There's sort of sequences of action.
Yeah.
But there's not, we're not sitting down for a sort of shot, reverse shot dialogue exchange between Princess Peach and Mario as we understand the power-ups. What it is sort of a slapsticky moment in which Mario learns, okay, I eat the thing, I grow big. And I have to say, I did actually appreciate the level of direct translation here, in that Mario was small when he entered the Mushroom Kingdom, and he had to eat a super mushroom to get a little bit bigger. I mean, it's not just that Peach is mega tall, it's that Mario didn't eat his power-up yet. So as a fan, I appreciated it. Of course, if you get hit when you have the mini mushroom, you actually die. You don't become small Mario.
Okay. Oh, I see. All right. I'm going to come to the screen and choke you.
I really did like that training montage sequence. I thought it was very fun. But it also highlights one of my two personal issues with the film, because again, there's global objective issues with the movie, but there's two things with this movie that I personally
socio-political issues.
Yeah, two socio-political issues with the movie. The first, and Tanner, I would imagine that we're going to be aligned here. I think the needle drops in this film are horrendous.
Oh yeah, I mean, honestly, I grew reticent to that fact after the No Sleep Till Brooklyn. I'm like, okay, and then Holding Out for a Hero. I'm like, okay. And then we do Thunderstruck, and
we do Take on Me before Thunderstruck.
Take on Me was probably the one that hurt me most. Maybe just because of like the very like, yeah, take on me reaction from the people in front of us. But yeah, I mean, honestly, it's a kids movie. They do these kind of things all the time, so I understand it from that perspective.
I just think that in the last 30 days, I've heard I Need a Hero 3 times.
They have been playing it a lot in movies recently. It's very strange.
Oh, that's right. It happened in Shazam and Tetris.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
But for me, it speaks to a larger point. And it goes into my other criticism, which is some of the humor of this film too. To me, Mario, and this is not a new observation, Mario is a timeless character. But Illumination's style is inherently not timeless. And I think the decision to include, even though these are not pop songs, we don't have there's no Lizzo song in the Mario Brothers movie.
There should be.
But the way in which they utilize needle drops, some of the humor that they do employ, like the Donkey Kong peck jumping.
Yeah, we're doing it's like a rock thing. We're doing Dwayne the Rock Johnson there. Yeah,
it just immediately dates this iteration of Mario and takes me out of the experience. That is my one kind of significant personal criticism of the film.
Sure,
and I do think that needle drop and that Holding Out for a Hero sequence does undercut what could have otherwise been quite whimsical, because the remixed score here of Koji Kondo's tracks and this new music, it is amazing.
And Brian Tyler of Iron Man 3 fame,
True.
Another great music score.
And that we talk about Holding On for a Hero and these tracks. It's a kids movie. It's a family movie that you need to put famous music in there. Frankly, Mario music is as famous as these other tracks. You know what I mean? You could have just used Mario music, and I think that would have made this film feel a lot less sort of garden variety Illumination, 2020s animation.
Yeah, I see that. I think you're dead on, because when they do those like big orchestral moments, renditions of original Mario music,
amazing.
It is great. And as I said, that's one of my big positives of the film is the score.
Yeah. Well, I actually find myself unfortunately disagreeing with some of the comments that you've made, because I do think that the timeless quality of this film comes from a weird combination of aspects. Is those songs that they're using are not current songs, which is, I think, a good thing in keeping it from being, like, specifically dated in the now.
Yeah.
Because those films have been used so frequently over the course of film history, I think they have kind of become timeless. They are stand-ins for certain kinds of moments, certain beats of action or character momentum. Those songs are, you can go back to 2002 and you'll be hearing them. So from that regard, and because I think they'll probably still be used for, you know, at least another 5-10 years, it dates it maybe in a time period, but I don't think that's necessarily avoidable in terms of if they want to use any kind of licensed songs. I think going back to the 90s and 80s was actually a better choice than, and keeps it more timeless than it would be otherwise. But I also think that for me, the score, well, I think it's good. To me, it ended up leaning a little too heavily on the Koji Kondo songs, not in terms of their pacing, but in terms of only sampling the most iconic moments of each of those songs. And to me, it kind of felt stitched together of, we're going to do a Mario Kart sequence, and we're going to use a sting from a Galaxy track, and a sting from a 3D World track, and a sting from a Mario 64 track, and whatever. And they would do a couple bars from this, a couple bars from that, then some random orchestral stuff, and then another couple bars from another iconic Mario song. And maybe I just need to listen to it again to really appreciate the orchestration of that. But to me, it felt very chopped up because Mario songs are meant to be played in long chunks and repeat and flow together naturally. But when you're taking multiple chunks from different songs and patching them together, to me, it felt very plug and play in terms of, hey, you recognize this beat? You recognize this thing?
I do recognize that, yeah.
And I actually found that a little bit too pandering to be like one of my strong suits of the movie, even though I think the music is good. I end up being a little bit frustrated with it.
Maybe it's just because I'm a dummy and have played probably 2.5 Mario games in my entire life, where I'm like, oh yeah, I seem to remember this from somewhere somehow. I remember this little riff from a Mario song. So maybe I am falling victim to the I recognize this thing that they're going for.
I think that pulling from the Koji Kondo scores is actually a good thing, but I wish they had stuck to certain songs for certain sequences rather than patching together multiple tunes to create moments that are just, for me, kind of feel slapdash together.
I mean, I just feel like we can't levy the claim against the Mario Brothers movie that it's being too pandering in its score, because literally the entire movie exists to pander.
Yeah,
sure.
And at a certain point, Mario medleys are nothing new. And it is nice to, as you're saying, Tucker, we do survey the series from a musical level quite nicely. It's not as though we're just taking the like the athletic theme from Super Mario World and the underground theme from Mario Brothers 1, and we're remaining in those most iconic early Mario era sonically. We are exploring the series, and there's a Bowser's Fury track in the film.
Yeah.
And so I personally really did enjoy the music, and I just think that we might just be approaching the idea of timelessness differently. I just don't, even though we're reinventing Mario in some ways, I still don't think that, even though it begrudgingly kind of works, I don't think No Sleep Until Brooklyn is really compatible with what Mario is.
Sure. No, I don't disagree that I didn't like the needle drops, but I don't think they make this movie, or future projecting, I don't think they'll make this movie as dated as you think, and I don't necessarily think that's necessarily a problem.
No, yeah.
For this,
as I said, this is a children's film first and foremost in my mind, and also like a Nintendo fan opening up the Mario IP for the first time in cinematic history, really. So yeah, and this sort of ties back into what I was saying at the beginning of people saying like, oh, go easy on this film, it's a kid's film, yada yada yada. Don't compare Jack Black's Bowser to Lionel Barrymore in your reviews, things like that. That's a very specific thing that I saw on Twitter. That's quite funny.
I mean, I wasn't going to.
Okay, well that's good, Abram. I'm glad that you weren't going to. At the same time, however, in my mind, I'm comparing this to other children's animated films that have like a similar runtime. I did a quick peruse here, but like such celebrated classics that have great stories, like The Lion King from 1994 or The Iron Giant from 1997, both come in around 90 minutes, have great stories, great character arcs, and are much more moving emotionally than the Super Mario Brothers movie. So it can be done, and it can be done much better than it is here.
Or even Miyazaki's work. I mean,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
we can say as much as we want that, like, this is a Western animated film, and it is. But as you see in the credits, and as you see from the opening credits too, Nintendo's Japanese team was heavily, heavily, heavily involved in the creative process of this.
Mhm.
And it'd be really fascinating to kind of learn where their input was and where Illumination's input was and where those intersected, where one superseded the other.
Mhm.
Because like there is no feel, like Japanese feel. There's no Japanese animated feel to this. At least not kind of in a classical way that I might have wanted.
Yeah.
Out of like, there's no feel of Ghibli here at all.
No.
Or anything
No, of
analogous
course
to
not.
it.
For me, the problem with this film, where I do think that it is worse than your standard animated movie that's not based on an IP like this, I think that I could even say that like the Minions movies have better, more coherent
Honestly,
stories.
yeah.
Is because this film is not focused on telling a story. And of course that seems a little bit blatant to say, but the other ones are trying to get you invested in characters for the first time and be invested in this world because they're creating it. But Illumination did not create Mario, and Nintendo was only handing out the IP for this film, and I feel like the Nintendo influence is felt in those Easter eggy moments of making Luigi's ringtone the GameCube theme, or making sure that each of the in-game element, or quote-unquote in-game elements, are represented properly in terms of how they work and like what abilities certain things have. That's where I feel like Nintendo was able to keep the vision the clearest, because it does feel like a one-to-one translation, as you said. But I do want to again bring it back to praise, because while I do think that the pacing of the movie and the lack of story is the biggest criticism of this film by far, I still do think the movie's greatest strength is in its action sequences, and that's like 75% of the runtime. And I think that when you're in these 6-7 minute action sequences, I think they're very compelling and incredibly well done. None of them are similar. They're very distinct. They have lots of visual variety in terms of what the characters are doing, where they're at, what things are in the sky, or which characters are involved. There's a lot going on. I think as those stand outside of the context of a story that's not stitching them together properly, I think those are genuinely very, very, very impressive.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree. I think that obviously the choreography is all there, and the movement and the action and the animation is all top notch. So I cannot fault it in any case there. But obviously, I think in many cases you have to ground action sequences in some sort of character or emotional attachment.
Of course,
so
absolutely.
Not there for me. But enough nuance here in this discussion. I want to talk cast, and I want to talk good or bad, thumbs up, thumbs down on performance from our cast here. Okay. Because this is an all celebrity cast largely. Some professional voice actors peppered throughout, but I want to
Ashley Birch as additional voices, which was fun.
But I want to go through the main and some of the supporting cast and just get you guys' feels on all these people. So starting with the big man himself, Chris Pratt as Mario. Good or bad, and now that we've seen the whole thing.
Yeah, he's fine.
Yeah. I'm actually going to break from what I just said. Inoffensive.
No nuance.
Here's nuance. Whatever. He's just whatever to me. Like, ultimately...
I do think that he gets a little bit more bearable as the film goes on. At the beginning, I was like, uh-oh, Chris Pratt voice. But as we start introducing him interacting with other characters, I think their performances totally supersede him, and he just becomes a vehicle for action and like making whoa, and then he's fine at that. Like, he's not delivering or lines really for like the second 2/3 of this
What about
film.
when he says "Mamma Mia" in slow motion a couple times?
He does that a couple times, yeah.
Abram, quick thoughts on Chris Pratt?
I think he's fine. I mean, I just don't care. Like, I just don't care. I have never really, other than the initial like visceral, like nervous system
Culture
level shock of knowing Chris Pratt's gonna be the voice, never really bothered me.
Yeah.
I'm not part of the cultural crusade against or in defense of Chris Pratt. I just sort of observe him, and I think he's fine.
Yeah.
I think he's fine.
Anya Taylor-Joy as Princess Peach? Good.
Yeah.
Thumbs up.
Nothing much to say there.
Lots of personality. I think she delivers. I think the combination of her like being like sort of powerful in her delivery, combined with the, I think, amazing facial expression animations on Peach,
she's doing a lot of
give her a lot of personality. Her eyes stretch
yeah.
and contract in really interesting ways, and her mouth is moving side to side. I think she's one of the best animated characters in this film, and her performance absolutely sells it. So I thought she was
good.
great.
Yeah. Charlie Day as Luigi, as Lou. Good.
Oh, he's so much.
Not
fun.
enough of
He's
him in
great.
this movie. It's called the Super Mario Brothers movie. This is a Mario movie, not a Mario Brothers movie.
That's my biggest
Yeah.
critique of the film. I don't necessarily care that much on a personal level if the story is weak, but the dynamic between Mario and Luigi when they're working together and bouncing off of one another, I think, is fantastic. And even though I understand stripping it back and separating them and making you feel like they want to regain that brotherly bond, it happens so suddenly and then returns so suddenly that it feels a little bit unearned in those moments. But he's so much fun, and because maybe I just don't know Charlie Day the best, like his voice was the least recognizable to me. I think he just absolutely slipped into the role of Luigi and like perfectly cast.
I think
perfectly
Charlie
cast.
Day just has a cartoony voice. When he's up in the air, he's like this. Oh, Mario, what's going on here? So very good from Charlie Day.
Mario!
Not enough of him is my note.
Absolutely.
And now the real big man, King Koopa.
Donkey Kong.
King Koopa himself, Jack Black as Bowser, is the best vocal performance in the whole film. He brings, if we're talking about personality, the biggest personality to Bowser. The only parts of the film where we were getting out of this, I'm like, oh, a guy who's a character who kind of like is entertaining and has screen presence for me in this film. Finally, this is great. I love seeing him. I love how he's obsessed with Peach whenever he's singing the song on the piano. I love it. Obviously, that's a great point to get Jack Black for. Fantastic stuff. God bless Jack Black for gracing us with his presence in this time in modern America.
I mean, Jack Black is just that's the best cast. They would really hit it there.
Yeah.
I mean, I love the meme that was going around of him on like the Kelly Clarkson show.
When he's wearing the outfit, yeah.
Yeah, she's like, "So were you excited to play Bowser?" And it cuts to him, and he's in a fucking full body Bowser costume.
He's like in a Bowser onesie, and he's like, yeah, I was pretty excited.
Or when he was on the red carpet and he had the one-of-one Bowser suit on, and he's like doing kung fu moves and showing off the suit.
There's also a video of him doing platforming in his backyard over like an AR Mario thing. It's so funny.
And
Jack
he
Black
just-
has so much care for this. He just commits 100%. He's great.
And so, I mean, the character of Bowser, and especially in like some of the Mario RPGs, he's got this goofy element to him, especially in like Paper Mario. Yeah. And so it was really fun seeing that on screen and seeing him do this ballad and do the ballad. And when I love the line, because again, my issues with the humor is selective. I think a lot of the humor is quite nice, actually.
The humor is not as offensive as other Illumination movies. It could have been so much worse.
This is actually something I was talking to Jean about on the ride home, of like, the minions are like fucking in the hot tub and like their ass is out, or they're making like toilet paper jokes or whatever. There's none of that in this movie, which I was really thankful for.
They don't make fart jokes or anything.
No, and actually really some of it's quite witty. Like I love when Kamek arrives to give Bowser the news about what Mario's up to, and he's like, "Come jam with me."
Yeah.
And Kamek's playing like 2 notes as Bowser is doing the underground theme.
Yeah.
And I love because Jack Black gets to do 2 ballads in the film, which is so funny. I really did appreciate that. I love that dimension of the character.
Keegan-Michael Key as Toad, but maybe the most unrecognizable for me. Like, I couldn't really tell. I think he's doing a good Toad voice, but ultimately, like, yeah.
Yeah, I think he's my least favorite.
Yeah.
Toad is a weird inclusion in this movie in terms of what he serves the plot as is basically nothing, just like walk around with Mario like twice, and then otherwise Mario is with Peach, so it doesn't fucking matter. But I thought that I think he was saddled with the worst humor, in my opinion. And the voice was grating, I guess, as Toad should be, but I don't think the movie would be any different.
Annoying as Toad should be.
It's as John was saying, he doesn't sound childlike enough. Like I would have gotten an actual young person to do Toad.
Oh yeah.
What Toad really serves to do is to cook food, which is what he does at the Toad School Cafe in Super Nintendo World.
He does. He only cooks food once though, at the beginning of the film.
Oh, and Abram, did you catch in the credits when they're going over each of the characters, they go Keegan-Michael Key is Toad, and they do the Captain Toad Treasure Tracker whistle. I like that a lot.
Don't they do some Captain Toad Treasure Tracker music when they're first entering the Mushroom Kingdom and Toad's walking them through?
Maybe. Again, my problem with the score is that it's mixing in so many fucking Mario themes that my brain can't keep up. I'm like, I know these songs. I'm humming along with them. I can't picture where they're from because they're like, okay, well, let's put something from 2016 next to something from 1999. Well, there's no fucking...
Well, God willing, this film does well enough where they make a Toad spin-off film. So we're settled with that voice for the entire...
I think they have saddled this character with the future potential to become a Captain Toad. And that's sort of his arc over the course of, a movie and a half or 2 movies or whatever. That's kind of where I see that character actually mattering in the grand scheme of things, because otherwise he feels very useless in this film.
And finally, rounding out with the peck-poppin' primate himself, Donkey Kong, portrayed by Seth Rogen.
Yeah, he's fantastic.
The biggest laugh the entire film got from our audience was when Seth Rogen does the Seth Rogen laugh as Donkey Kong, and I think that says something. Like, whether or not you think it matches Donkey Kong as a character, I think Tucker's right that it does match this bro-y persona that they've given him. Seth Rogen, even at like 50 years old or however old he is now, is like at his core still this frat pack kind of comedy guy. And it works for Donkey Kong here. And when he's doing the laugh, I'm laughing because I love the Seth Rogen laugh.
Yeah, so Donkey Kong's just one of my favorite Nintendo characters, and I really loved him in the movie. While I was not crazy about his sort of rock peck popping. I think he is, to Tucker, your point about the action before, he is animated beautifully, as is the entire film.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really fun going to it's not Kong Island, they call it like the kingdom of the
Jungle Kingdom.
The Jungle Kingdom in the movie.
Yeah.
But just being there and seeing him beat the shit out of Mario and the way he moved and the way he throws barrels, and it speaks to what I've been saying this whole time of the movie gave me what I wanted to see.
Yeah.
And we basically rounded out the cast, and as we're starting to wind down the review, this is kind of the point I want to hit on because I feel like I haven't really gotten to yet, in that it really was this celebration of these characters and places that have meant so much to me across my life. And that is why this movie is going to do very well, and that is why it has the audience score it has. Because for as vapid as it is, for as filmically flawed as it is, it also understands why I am in that theater, which a lot of a lot of video movies don't. There are very few moments here where they make jokes at Mario's expense. They make the joke about the Mario voice in the commercial, which is I'm not crazy about, but for the most part, there is so much love that was here. Things like just having Chunky Kong in the stadium, and using all the power-ups, and having the Nintendo playing card like logo on the side of a building, sort of out of focus, or the Balloon Kid guy up on a billboard.
Yeah, there's Ice Climbers references, there's Duck Hunt references. They really go all out on classic Nintendo, and I think that's very special. Notably avoiding any major IPs in their references.
Well, unless they have to do a feature film of those. Yes.
No, and that's entirely my point. Is I think it feels cohesive as a real world, because Brooklyn, as it stands, is a place that has like weird reverence for like NES era black box Nintendo. But no Zelda, no Metroid, no Star Fox to be referenced at all. Although there is an F-Zero blue eagle fucking thing on the wall somewhere.
No, that was the R-Wing above the TV, I believe.
Oh, there was? Well, there was also the F-Zero thing.
Well,
and Punch Out fucking...
Yeah, there's Punch Out pictures all over. But, I just... What was I going to say now? You've distracted me. I was thinking about all these these things I know.
Sidelined into Nintendo, old school Nintendo talk. My brain started to shut down.
So much love.
Yes, thank you so much. Okay. The other thing I really appreciated is that there is a great amount of Mario Odyssey iconography. The cat suit is the linchpin for the entire action sequence against Donkey Kong.
White Tuxedo Bowser
is from Odyssey.
Toaster in a Kingdom.
And Tanner, this is not something that's going to even be on your radar.
I'll shut my brain off for a second again.
But there has been a large issue. It's sort of waning now, but there has been a pervasive sentiment that Nintendo celebrates Mario through the prism of like 8-bit Mario. and that's what they do. I like the dead stare that Tanner has right now. It's very funny. But
Sorry, continue.
The movie does a really nice job, again, to the fan service lens of celebrating the entire series. This really does capture the width of the universe.
Sure.
And I like that. I like that we have new Super Mario Brothers touchstones, and we have Odyssey touchstones, and we have 3D World, and there's 64, but and classic, 8-bit Mario, and there's when you were in Donkey Kong's bungalow, you see what is clearly like a riff on the Dinosaur Island map from World on the wall. I mean, again, these are not things that make a film good, but they are things that make me love an experience, a cinematic experience. And that's what I really take away from the Mario movie. In addition, too, because I didn't really get to say it before either, but I think that the action is so much fun. It's grounded in the Mario universe, but it's animated so fluidly, and it takes liberties where it needs to take liberties to make a compelling sequence. The movie does end with Invincible Mario in the same way that Sonic the Hedgehog 2 ends with Super Sonic, which I think is kind of bizarre, but it's just a nice payoff moment of knowing, okay, they grabbed the star, and I know the songs is about to hit, and I love seeing Mario pick up a Sludge Bro and throw them into other guys and have these big, like, pull-out shots of them kicking all the minions aside.
And
they
put Bowser in a jar.
They put Bowser in the cum jar.
In the cum jar, yep.
I didn't say that part.
I just really did love it. And it doesn't negate what I feel is the objective tenor of this film, but on a subjective level, I truly, truly, deeply did love it.
I think this is a tale of two films in a really strange way of, structurally as a film, it's very weak. But I think care-wise and quality-wise as a film, I think this film is top-notch. I think this is up there with Toy Story 4 for me as one of the best animated films I've ever seen. The amount of texture and lighting and effects on things are so top-notch that it makes it feel like a world that you can reach out and touch, and it makes it feel inviting and vibrant and alive and stretchy and bouncy and ridiculous and so clever in terms of how it reinvents Mario's world. This is my favorite interpretation of the world of Mario because it is so ridiculously well textured. So, to a similar degree, why I love Odyssey so much is that it makes Mario's ridiculous aspects feel grounded in realistic fabric textures and rock textures or whatever. This movie does that, but within a realistic lighting engine and Peach having realistic hair and stuff. It feels like a real world. I love the way that they were able to realize that. So from that degree, and I don't think anyone would necessarily criticize the film for this, but like, this is not a cheap film, obviously. No. This is not a rushed film. They put so much ridiculous care into everything in the background. There's so many goddamn toads and characters and flowers and mushrooms. Everything's crazy and colorful. I think it's such a well-made film, but it's not a well-constructed film, which is a very interesting balance where you can see where the care went and the effort, and it's just so well thought through, but then they didn't think it through in this like very, very, very obvious way. But I think they weighed their pros and cons, to be 100% honest. Like, hey, business sense mind. Yes, promote Mario, promote series, promote Nintendo World, make it 90 minutes so we can get a lot of fucking showtimes. But, and so, okay, where we got to sacrifice things. Story. Mario's not known for story, so it's okay if the story is not, okay, all right, boom. Now, let's focus on making the animation as polished as it is, and making the Mario world feel as comprehensive as it can be, and make the action sequences as fantastic as they are. And to me, that's where the strength of the movie, all of those are the absolute strengths of this film, and it leans so heavily into those that if you are able to see where the strengths lie versus the weaknesses, I think it leans so heavily into its strength that it comes out the other end as a rewarding and quality experience despite its glaring flaws.
I mean, I don't know. I think ultimately you got to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time.
Not me.
Oh, sorry, I can't do it. But it's not like you have...
I can barely blink and breathe at the same time.
When you're making a film, it's not like you have to allot your chips to either story or visual fidelity. Mm-hmm. You can do both, and many, many films have. So I just have to weigh that in my mind when I'm talking about this. And yes, Absolutely. Of course, it looks great. I'm not going to fault it for that. But ultimately, you got to ask yourself, am I just saying that the Mario movie looks great because it's, adapting the Mario visuals that I know and love, and quality of animation wise, is it any different than, is it any more fight? Well, what am I saying here? Is it any more higher fidelity than Minions: The Rise of Gru? I don't know.
No, not necessarily, because those films were developed concurrently.
Exactly. And when Mario is bouncing around and off walls and stuff like that, is it different than when Bob is bouncing around and off walls and getting smashed by bricks and stuff like that? No, not really. And it is entirely riding on the fact that it is the Super Mario Brothers film. And yes, it's a great world, adapted very well, but it's, I think as you guys have sort of talked about here, it is riding a lot on, like, are you in tune with this world? Do you love Mario? Do you love Donkey Kong? Do you love Kamek and Charles Martinet and all of this stuff that's in this film? Do you love seeing the Nintendo card game logo that's on the building in the background? That I saw, I'm like, I'm sure that's a thing because it's sort of framed as such. But anyway, that's why I come down on this film where I do. And this is just two Nintendo fans and an idiot talking about the Super Mario Brothers movie
We did throw that around as a rename for this.
Two Mario Brothers and two Nintendo fans and an idiot. Yeah,
and Timo. That's the full name of the channel.
Oh, sure. But yeah, for talking about the Super Mario Brothers movie for much longer than it should be talked about, frankly.
We're ready to give scores?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
4.5
out of 10.
I'm going to give 2 scores.
Okay.
I'm going to give the movie a 4 out of 10. And I'm also going to give the movie a 9 out of 10.
Sure.
The 4 out of 10 is I really do feel like this is a 2-star film. On a get all the way up here, 40,000 feet bird's eye Abram perspective. I think this is a 2-star movie. But then we got where's my heart? This side of my body? This is where my heart
Sounds
is.
good, yeah.
It's a 9 out of 10.
I don't think you have one of those, actually.
And you're right. There's just this fucking superstar. In there. He's a Mario fan. I'm gonna give the film an 8.5 out of 10. I really did have a ton of fun with it, and I'm interested to rewatch it and see how my thoughts grow and evolve. Because I do think this is a film that warrants rewatching and seeing if maybe there is some lighter world building and character stuff that I can pick up on, or if the lack of story makes it an unrewarding second watch, which I think is totally possible. But that's not the purpose of this review. And the purpose of this review is, what did I think when I watched the goddamn movie? And you know what I thought when I watched the goddamn movie? I had a lot of fun. I recognized its qualities, and it made me smile. So that is actually going to do it for our long, thoughtful, and comprehensive review of the Super Mario Bros. Movie. We will be back to review the Yoshi's Island movie, in which Yoshi takes over Manhattan.
Hopefully.
That's my prediction for the sequel to this film in a couple of years when they make that. But join our Discord, subscribe, listen, watch the
Do
videos.
the things. Abram, what would you say your audience was comprised of demographically?
So we arrived, and the only people in there were
Whites.
Because there's one guy, the creme de la creme of, like, Redditor.
The leader.
The leader,
Right.
maybe. If a beta can be a leader at the same time, this was him.
Right.
When Jack Black Bowser came up on screen for the first time, he stood up and saluted. And
I didn't see that.
Yeah, he stood up and saluted,
I was
and
too glued to the screen.
no one laughed, and I think that maybe kind of dialed him down for the rest of the film.